Hey everyone, welcome to School of Scarlet. Today I thought I would do a paint with me and just have you come along with me painting. So painting and driving are something that really brings a lot of intuitive downloads while I do this. So I'm going to bring you along my painting journey, but I'm actually recording this as I'm driving. If y'all don't know this, I have another channel called God Loves Cars. This is actually a channel that has been birthed from my podcast. And so my podcast around God Loves Cars, I just generally ride in my car and record videos as I get downloads. It's a very intuitive thing that I started doing as a passion project. So I'm going to kind of share with you my journey and sharing my intuition with y'all. So for most of my life, I've been very intuitive. I've always really felt things around me. I've just been that way where, there was just things that I would see that I don't think a lot of other people would see. So oftentimes I would maybe talk about this with friends or, sometimes really generally see things and share this with people and they weren't seeing these things. So I began to notice that there was people that could see these things and people that couldn't. And even those that say that they could, oftentimes I found out they were just pretending. So I decided to kind of close that part of myself down. And it wasn't that I didn't get the messages anymore, that I didn't feel anything. I continued to feel everything. I was actually very highly sensitive. But I didn't talk about this. For a majority of my childhood, I was very quiet and shy. I would say probably all of my childhood and most of my adulthood. I hardly ever talked, especially with people that weren't my family. And this was because it really felt unsafe. A lot of what I was seeing really generally felt unsafe to me. And what I was seeing other people doing just didn't feel right to me. And so the world was very strange. So I lived more of an inner world rather than an outer world. So I was quietly living in my own world the majority of the time. And because of this, I had an extreme amount of focus. I would oftentimes go into a stare or gaze at staring at, another person or a tree or an animal. And I would get all kinds of intuitive messages by doing this. And it was just amazing. So I continued to do these things, and this was just part of my childhood, my life, but I kept all of this to myself. And then later in life, I did begin to share some of this stuff with, romantic partners and things like that, and still I found that they didn't understand. So for many of you that are listening to this, I know that you have also experienced these things, and you've probably felt like the black sheep of your family, or people saw you as different in some way. Maybe you were bullied as a child. Maybe people ostracized you or pointed out your differences or made fun of the things that a lot of people now consider spiritual gifts. So this is all to say that this is just part of the journey for those beings that are expressing this way. The majority of people are not expressing this way, and that is where there's a little bit of this loneliness and this feeling like an outsider. But now with the online world and the community of just even YouTube, but there's so many others, right? There's just so many different communities and just different ways to connect with people that are also going through similar things like this. So I've really created this channel now to really share intuitive messages with you now. I was really scared to share my gift with people. When I went to church, I went to basically almost a Pentecostal church, but I guess you would call it, or they called it more of a community church. And this church really did believe in spiritual gifts, and oftentimes they would have prophets come. And they had one specific prophet that they really believed to be true and not a fallen prophet or anything like that. He had been doing this for many years. Well, he would come back to our church, and I would attend every single time that he came. And he only ever gave me one message, maybe in the span of 7 to 10 years. And when he gave the message to me, it was totally spontaneous. I often had, my own kind of doubts about this prophet. Even though everybody believed in him, I had my own doubts. But he genuinely called me totally spontaneously, and he said some things to me that were very deep. But mostly he left it with the ending just letting me know that there would be books in my future. And at the time, this meant nothing to me. I was not writing books. I was not interested in books. I had already gone to university. I was just living your normal 9-to-5 job every day sort of thing, not thinking I would ever change the job or do anything. So that was a very puzzling thing. But now years have passed, and I can tell you I've written several books. And I never would have thought that would have ever happened. It wasn't something I was trying to do. It wasn't something that I wanted to do or had in my mind at any point when I was given that message. The next message he gave me on that same time was that I was not crazy, that there was a gift that I needed to share. And I knew instantly what that was. And it almost was like I could feel something in the pit of my stomach. And I felt like I had been exposed. This was all happening in the congregation in front of everybody. Of course, nothing was revealed of what the gift was or nothing like that, but I knew what it was. And it was just so scary because I had been hiding it for so long. And I was told to share the gift, but I didn't share that gift. I wrote books and stuff later on, and I shared some of my message earlier in this YouTube channel, but I never really shared everything. And so that came through, and it's very interesting because now I have really shared that gift. And most recently, in my most recent videos, I've kind of made a shift into now sharing that side of myself, and it has really opened up a lot of opportunities. So this is a message to let you know that spiritual gifts are, very strong, and they're alive and well. They're not dead like some organizations and religious groups want to say. So if you do have a religious, spiritual gift, not religious, but spiritual gift within you, it's time to bring that forth. Why are you hiding something that has been so natural to your being from the very beginning? And why would someone ostracize or condemn that gift that is so beautiful and natural? See, these messages are all uplifting. These messages are all coming from a very, very pure, beautiful space. But people want to hear things around fear. People want to hear things that are a little bit lower vibrational. And that's maybe okay for some, but these messages are meant for other people that are bringing forth their gifts. And so if you are someone that's very intuitive and you're bringing forth intuitive messages, this is the time to bring them forth. We need light here, and the light is very important. Yes, there's a lot of darkness, but just the same as there is darkness, there is light. And the light can actually eradicate darkness very, very quickly. It's something very powerful. So bring your light onto this world. However you do that, if you sing, if you dance, whatever you do, bring that here onto this earth. Share it with others. Let others see that channel, that beacon of light that you are, so that they can also share their light. So this message is just to share a little bit about intuition with you. The other thing that I learned about intuition was something kind of interesting. I really thought it was something weird that was happening within me, which is I think why that prophet channeled through that message, "You're not crazy," because I really thought it was a crazy thing. Well, years later, I'm someone that really likes to watch nature documentaries, and I started watching some on Netflix around fungi, and then there was one around trees. And what they really focused on in these documentaries was the fact that these basically organisms, I don't know what you want to call them, the mushrooms, had consciousness and were speaking to each other, and they had families and just many different things. The same thing around trees. They talked about how trees have consciousness within them and how they're responsive and how their root systems know how to communicate with one another, and they shift and move depending on what they sense and feel, and they use a lot of those intuitive type things. And I had always sensed nature around me since a small child. And that was another thing that I felt that I gained messages from, is from nature. And I always found nature to be very, very conscious and alive. And to connect with some of these documentaries on Netflix, even, as simple as they were, they opened my mind to the fact that everything has consciousness. Later I would learn and I would come to realize that the consciousness is shared and really we are all one. But this all began from watching this documentary. Then the next thing that really opened up my intuition or my relaxation around sharing my intuition was the Myers-Briggs personality test. One day I was at my family home and someone suggested we all take personality tests. Well, I went ahead and did this. And when I took the personality test, I came out an INFJ. And the INFJ personality had all kinds of descriptions of how that person is, and et cetera, et cetera. But one of the main things that stood out is how they process the world, how they see things, how they problem solve. And their main way of doing this is intuition. So their dominant function is intuition. So rather than thinking things logically or, some analytical way or anything like that, it is totally intuition that the INFJ initially relies on. So this really brought forth to me the truth of my being that I had been denying all this time. And these were simple things, but I never felt the permission. I never felt it was okay to share these things because I had heard so many things about people and situations and just basically condemnation around anyone that spoke messages or anything like this. Even simply visiting the prophet at my church appeared to be a problem for a lot of people that were not within that faith. So because of this, I really shunned away from that. At some point, I really realized that everything was one, and then, everything kind of opened up to me, and there was no more fear of really going into my intuition. But at some level, there was a fear of sharing these messages. See, these messages are mostly meant for myself, but at a later point, I was shared or, kind of initiated into the consciousness or the collective consciousness of everything and how everything is actually one. So when the messages are coming forth for me, they're actually coming forth for everyone. So in sharing these messages, they actually resonate with a large part of the population that is experiencing similar things to myself. So I hope that if you are intuitive, that you will begin to share your messages, that you will feel permission from the universe now to go forth. It is okay. Share your messages. Bring light onto this earth. That is what you are here for. You're here to experience the joy, the highest vibrations that are out here, and also the darkness. But in experiencing darkness, we also experience light, and we see the power of light, and we see how we can oscillate or we can play in either one. And we can actually get the darkness out if we want to. So this is just a message to really bring forth what is intuition. Is intuition something bad? Is it something to be condemned? Is it something to be stopped? No, this is a communication that has always been happening within you. A very sacred communication, really, because it's a communication of all things, the communication of oneness coming together. So I encourage you to really step into your intuition, really begin to allow your intuition to speak to you, really listen to your intuition, because what you're going to be seeing is a big shift in the way that everything happens here on earth. And while the dominant function for most people hasn't been intuition, those that are more connected to their intuition will begin to flourish now as everything begins to change on this earth. But we all have the function of intuition. You don't have to be an INFJ. You don't have to have had this gift or any of these visions as a child. You don't have to have had any visions. Intuition is simply a feeling, a knowing within of the next step that you should take. So I hope that this message was useful to you. If it was, please give me a heart, a thumbs up, and comment down below. I love getting all of y'all's comments. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all.